My name's Matt Blair, and I'm a software developer. And I've been working on making a list and a map of poetry posts around Portland for about the last year or so.
My name's Sean Milliken. I live here at this house, and I make my living managing construction projects and doing engineering work for Intel, other semiconductor facilities.
What is a poetry post?
Okay, it's typically some kind of pole or piece of wood that has a box, kind of like one of the real estate flyer boxes, and then someone posts a poem in there. And usually it's a homeowner that's sharing the poem with their neighbors and people walking by their houses. Some people actually put a poem in there, and they may put 20 copies in and encourage people to take them. Other people kind of have a take one, leave one approach, so it's kind of an exchange of poetry.
Well, it's essentially a physical venue to display a work rather than putting it in a book. It's a way to put it next to your house, next to the street, someplace where the public can view it, and mostly it's for the neighbors in the neighborhood.
So you have taken this interest in the poetry posts and developed a smartphone app.
I originally got the idea, actually I originally heard about the poetry posts when Sue Gemmel had posted this idea of having a poetry post app, a way for people to find them and to do walking tours. And I spoke to her, and the first thing I realized is, wow, there's not even a list. So that's the starting point, is to just get a big list of these in one place that you can start working with. I think I've gathered around 60 locations so far, and everyone who I've spoken to has said, oh, that can't even be half of them. There got to be more here and there. But what I've seen so far is there's a collection around Irvington. There's a collection around the Grant Park area, just north of Grant Park and a few to the south.
The poetry post and slash poll idea came from a guy who runs the Begonia Press out in eastern Washington.
Tell us about him a little bit.
And well, he just has a post by his house. He lives in town, and it started pretty much the same way. People knew he had a publishing house and he published things, so they would just tack poems up on a fence post next to his house. And he said, well, what a great idea. So he started putting some of his work out, and pretty soon, it was just littered with work. It's kind of interesting.
What do you think people's motivations are for putting a poetry post up on their yard?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. I think sometimes people are just fans. Sometimes maybe they want to give people walking by an excuse to slow down a little bit, rather than just kind of plow ahead through the neighborhood. I notice it has that effect on me.
It just has created this really great sense of community throughout the entire Portland area. And some of it's reached a little bit beyond that. What I couldn't accomplish by submitting my writing to journals has happened through the poetry books.
The satisfaction of knowing that other people are affected by it?
Right, exactly. And that's the whole point, as far as I'm concerned, as a writer, is making a connection with people and having something to say that they relate to.
For some people, I think it is to share their own poetry. It's a venue to do that when they might not have one of those.
There can be pressure to perform, but that's something you can accept or not accept. And the nice part about this is you can put out your favorite poet. You don't necessarily have to write. In fact, most of the people who get these things put up their favorite poems, and it doesn't matter who it is.
I've experimented a little bit with an app for iPhone, and I actually have a working one. Haven't quite released it yet. I decided to do a web map first, so that it's a little bit more accessible to more folks at this point. I didn't want to just have the list and not share it. And so that's available at poetrybox.info. If you just type that into a browser, you can find the information. And then once there's an app, that'll be available from the same location. The main idea is that you can find these as you're walking around the neighborhood. So you could zoom in on your current location and find what's within walking distance near you. Once you're looking at each of the poetry boxes on the map, you can also see a photo to see what they look like, which can be really helpful sometimes, because especially during summer, you might have one that has a lot of growth around it, and it's kind of hard to see them even from a house away sometimes. So it's good to have an idea of what you're looking for.
When you travel, have you seen anything like this in other cities?
No. The closest thing that I've seen reminds me of Chicago in the early 70s, when there was a lot of political pamphleteering and posters, and you'd come up on telephone poles that had 2 or 3 inches thick of posters on them from either concerts or political actions or meet at Grant Park on such and such a day at such and such a time. That's the only place that I recall that sort of thing happening, where people would put stuff up.
I want people to get out and walk around in their neighborhoods. I don't want to make coffee table apps where someone's just sitting on their couch and looking at their iPad and thinking, oh, that's very nice.
I got a really nice note a couple of years after I started this. Was a little exchange by some anonymous person, and that was fun.
The purpose of this is to get people out into the world, and so that's another reason to not have a whole lot of information in the app, because once somebody arrives, they really should put the phone back in their pocket and just enjoy the place. I have had some people say, well, I went to this place and I couldn't find it. Sometimes it's because we have the wrong address or it doesn't exist. But other times it's because they want to almost be led right to that spot. And I'm not concerned about that final level of detail, because again, if they get within the vicinity and then they have to look around for it, they have to work a little bit for it, I think that's fine.
And then you've met your goal for
Right.
the project.
Right. This is a way to do something hands-on, which is so satisfying. I mean, if you have a craft or a skill and you can pursue it and engage people with it, that's sort of
Yeah.
the whole meaning.
That's the whole
being
meaning of life.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah,